Today we set out to really show the similarities and differences between SmartList Builder from eOne and SmartList Designer that comes with Microsoft Dynamics GP. In this comparison, we'll compare the features available in both products on Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015. We're going to start with a little history on the two products. SmartList Builder has been available since Microsoft Dynamics GP 8.0 and has been always developed by eOne Solutions, but was available from Microsoft for many years and in 2014 came back to eOne. SmartList Designer was released with Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 SP2 by Microsoft. If we take a look at the features available in both, there are many differences. A complete list is available on the eOne site at the link shown on the screen. Let's just look at a few of them here. They both are able to create new smart lists, but only SmartList Builder is available to modify default ones. You can use SQL views as tables in both options, but with SmartList Designer it has to come from your company database. SmartList Builder gives the additional functionality to add SQL tables and scripts as your table type, as well as use extended resources and smart lists as those table types. Creating go-tos is available within both products, but it is limited in SmartList Designer as it doesn't have as many options as SmartList Builder does, such as going to any GP window that you would like. SmartList Builder gives you the ability to be able to format your string, date, integer, and list fields, whereas SmartList Designer has limited functionality on the formatting and basically is just being able to set the currency. Calculated fields is available in both products, but it is limited in SmartList Designer as to the functions that are available in those calculations. Restrictions are also available in both, but it is limited again in SmartList Designer as to the restriction types you can set up. SmartList Builder allows for multi-company and summary smart lists to be created so that you can expand on the data you're going to get. Creating Excel reports is available in both, but again is limited in SmartList Designer as to how you can create that Excel report and what you can add. Creating navigation lists and drill downs is a function only available in SmartList Builder. The last feature there is Table Finder, which is only available in SmartList Builder, and that is available to help you find the tables you need to build your new smart list, so it can be very helpful when trying to figure out where your data is stored. So let's really dig into looking at the actual product and their features. The first comparison we'll do is to create a new list from an existing list. So we're going to take a look at the sales line item smart list that's available as a default smart list and see what we can do to create a new list based on that existing setup that is there. We will start with SmartList Designer. The first thing we need to do is run the sales line item smart list, and then we can click on New, and it's going to create a new smart list for us. Once we've named it, we can then move on to adding the additional information we may need on this new list that we're creating. The one thing to note here is that generally if you're going to create a smart list based on an existing list, you want the fields that are there available to you, and then probably some of the fields that are available on the list but not shown by default. With SmartList Designer, if you want those fields that aren't shown by default, you would have to link on all the tables again just to get those fields. You only get the fields that are default on that smart list to begin with. Once we save this, you'll see it in SmartList here as a new list for us to use. Now if we try and do the same thing in SmartList Builder, we can add an existing smart list to a new setup using the SmartList table type. So we'll enter in a name, and then pick the smart list that we want being the sales line item SmartList. When we do this, we get all of the columns that are available in the SmartList with just the ones that are marked as default in this new one we're creating. If we need additional tables or other resources, we can then link them on as well. When we save this, we're going to have a similar list to what we had when we created it in SmartList Designer, the difference being the additional columns we have available to us without making any other changes to the list. The nice thing about this with SmartList Builder is we can actually modify the existing SmartList as well. So if we wanted everything that sales line items had for us and just needed to add some additional stuff, format some different fields, we can do that by either creating the new one like we just did or modifying the default one we have already. To do that, we just click Modify when we're on that sales line item SmartList, and it will actually bring up that SmartList for us to modify in SmartList Builder. We can make the changes we need to, and then when we save it, it will save on that existing sales line item ones, and all of the favorites that we had will still be there to use against this modified list. Now let's take a look at creating one from scratch. What we're going to do is create a sales line item summary by customer for the invoices list. So again, that's a sales line item list, doing a summary by the customer, and we're only going to show invoices. First, we'll start in Designer. So we're going to click New in SmartList, and it opens SmartList Designer. The first thing we need to do is give our list a name. So we'll just call it Invoice Summary by Customer. We're going to put it in the Sales Series, and now we need to pick the tables. So how do I determine out of this whole list which tables to use? It's not the easiest thing. As you look, I'd assume it's a sales table, but there's a lot in the list that I could choose from. Now, knowing GP, I happen to know it's the sales transaction amounts work that I want, so I'm going to mark that. And when I do so, it gives me all of the fields. So I can either mark all and then unmark the ones I don't want, or just mark the few that I do want here. So we'll just pick a couple. Okay, so I know that one. Now I know I also need the sales transaction work. So we're just going to pick a couple of the fields from that table as well that we might need, such as document date. So now that we have our fields selected, we have to tell it how those two tables relate. So we're going to pick the sales transaction amounts, and we're going to join it to the sales transaction work using the SOP type. Or I can just click the auto link, and it will link the tables for me as SmartList Designer thinks they should be linked, so by SOP number and SOP type. So let's say OK, and we will save that and see what our list looks like. You can see here we have a list of all of our sales transactions that are unposted at the moment. So we need to limit that down just to the invoices because our report was just for invoices. So on our SmartList, we're going to click Modify, and it'll reopen it back in SmartList Designer. And I'm going to create a filter on the SOP type where it is equal to invoice. Now, when I'm going here, do I type invoice? Do I type a number 2? I'm not quite sure if I use what SQL stores it as, or if I use what I see it in the front end as. So I'm not quite sure, but we'll go with invoice for now. And we'll save this again and see if that worked. And it looks like it did, so we're good. I don't need the SQL name. So now that's just the work tables. I'd like to add on the history. So let's go back into Designer. And I'm not seeing an option to tell it to bring in the history as well, but maybe I can link on the sales transaction history and the sales transactions amounts history But how would I link those to the work? I only have an inner join, outer join, and a cross join. Those don't really link on a union like I would need to do. So I guess I can't get the history on the same report as the work. So with that being said, I guess we're not going to be able to build our complete report because we can't get that history on there, but we'll stick to just the work and see what else we can do. Now, I'd kind of like a go-to to the sales order processing document inquiry. So let's see, can we do a go-to there? And when I select add, it looks like I can only do a SmartList, a navigation list, or a website. So I guess I can't do it to a GP window either. The other thing I'd like to do when I think about this is maybe I want the returns on here because that could affect an invoice. So when I put the returns on, I want it to show those as a negative value so that it subtracts out off of my totals. So to do that, I think I have to create a calculated field. So I'll click the button to do that. We'll give it a name of extended price calc and do a currency as our type. Now from previous knowledge, I know I need to do a case statement. So I'm going to pick case here and add that in. And it appears that I'm going to have to do this step by step. So let's go find our table. And let's see, I want to do it on the SOP type. So I want to case the SOP type. And then when it is equal to 4, which would be a return, then I want it to and it doesn't look like there's a then, so we'll have to maybe type then in, I guess. We'll go to constants here and type it in and see how this works. Insert that. So then I want it to take the extended price and then I want to do it times a -1. So we're going to get our multiplication and then we'll go enter a constant of -1. Now if it isn't a return, I just want to get the extended price. So we'll go then get our else statement. And we'll do the extended price again. And we'll just end this using the end statement. Now if I look, it doesn't look like it put any spaces in there, but let's save it and see what happens. It's not valid, so let's see what we did. We might have to put some spaces in here, so we're going to just start putting some space in here between every word that needs it. Okay, let's see if it's valid now. So it is valid. Good. Let's go see what data we get. We'll say okay. And it's not on our list, so let's go see what happened to it. Still not there. What's wrong with our calculated field? Oh, save it again. Now it's there, so I don't know what happened, but I guess we gotta save twice. And now it's there. So we forgot to change our restriction to have the returns back on here, so we'll go add return. I'm not quite sure how I do this, if I put a comma in there, if I do this, how I get it to show both of them. Obviously it's not that, so let's try a comma. And I got the invoices, but I didn't get the returns. So let's try again. We'll just see if we can get returns to show up and see if our calculation's even working. So now I get the returns and my extended calc. It looks like it is working. I'm just going to turn on the dollar sign on it since it is a price. I want to see that in 2 decimals. Give it a little bit of formatting. Say OK here. See what we get. Okay, that looks like it's formatted right. So I'm still not sure how to get both the invoice and return without having the orders, quotes, and that type of thing on my report. But before I drive myself crazy trying to get all that done in SmartList Designer, let's just go see how easy it is in SmartList Builder to build this same list. So in SmartList, I'm going to click New when I have the builders installed. Now I'm just going to enter in a new SmartList ID and name similar to how we did in SmartList Designer. So we'll just enter INV sum cost. And then we'll call it SLB Invoice Summary by Customer. We'll put it in the sales folder. And now from previous work, we know we need the sales transaction amounts work and the sales transaction work tables, but how would I know that if I didn't know GP? Well, SmartList Builder actually has a function built into it called Table Finder. We're going to open the Sales Transaction Inquiry Zoom via the Inquiry window so that I can see the type of data that I want on this list. So from there, I can go to Tools, Table Finder, and it's going to pull open the Table Finder with the window I had open already in the list, and I can see all of the tables that are on that window. Now I can also pick a field or pick a sub-window and pick a field in that window, and it's going to tell me specifically that field comes from these 1 or 2 tables here. So we see 3 of them. One being work, one being history. So we'll pick the work and give it a SmartList ID and name here, similar to what we did before when we were typing it in SmartList Builder. And we'll click Save. And now it has gone to SmartList Builder and put that table in there for us. So you can see it put the sales transaction amounts work, and now I can pick the fields that I want. Now one thing that's nice here that SmartList Designer didn't give me was the ability to have columns available for display and available to mark as the default ones I want to see. So we'll just mark a few of the ones for default, the rest will just be available in the columns button for us. I know from previous that we need to add that sales transaction work table, but if I didn't know, the Table Finder is also available in SmartList Builder to link on from there. So we can find our same window. And then I can start going through here, picking a field again, such as the customer number, and now I know it's the sales transaction work. So I can select that, and it will add it in, and if it can, it will automatically link them for me. So I can click Save because it did that link. And now I have those same 2 tables we used in Designer in SmartList Builder, and I can mark the columns in the sales transaction work that I need as well. Let's just take a look at our list now in SmartList and see what we get. It looks very similar to what we had before, but of course we're not restricted by invoice yet. So we want to restrict that out, so we'll click Modify to get back to SmartList Builder and go to Restrictions. We'll add a restriction here where sales transaction amounts work and the SOP type. And we know we want the 2 of them, the return and the invoice, so we're going to do is equal to 1 of list. And now we can just pick invoice and add it, and pick return and add it. We don't have to know how to type those in, we're just picking them in a list and it's creating that query for us. We'll save our restriction, and now we have that available to us, so we'll say OK. And now we also wanted it summary by customer, so we're going to go to Options and go to Summary and turn on the Summary SmartList option. Now I need to tell it to group by the customer because that's what I want it to summarize by. So we'll just pick customer number and group by that. Now remember, this was a feature we couldn't do in Designer, so this isn't something we did before, but I want to show me the maximum customer name so that I get a customer name based on that customer number, so we pick maximum there. And let's see what it's doing to our other fields, such as our extended price. It's going to sum that one, so that should be good. What about our item number? It'll count that. Sounds good. So we'll say save. And now you can see we might turn off some of these fields as it's counting them. So let's go do that. We'll turn off some of them that are by default. We don't need all those counts. We'll save it and look at it again. And now I have a record per customer, and it's giving me the extended price. Now let's modify it again and see if we can add on that history table. Doesn't look like I can do it using the joins in the normal tables. So let's see if this match table option will do it for us. And it looks like it might. So we're going to enter work as our description for the first table. And we'll pick that sales transaction amounts history. To join on there and match up. And it looks like it matched all of the fields. We'll call this new one history so that we know that's the history table, and save it. And save our table. Now it looks like we have two tables on there. So we're going to do the same thing for the sales transaction work. Again, we'll call it work and history and add on our sales transaction history table. And save that. And save our match table and save our tables there. Now we have a match table to the amounts and a match table to the header. And so it's going to bring in the work and history. So let's save that and see what we get. Before we had 38 records. We may still have 38. Looks like we have 65, as we must have added some customers in there that only had history records. But it is still giving us that group by on the customer, but is pulling in work and history. Now let's see if we can create that go-to. So we'll go into SmartList Builder. And we'll go to go-to, and we'll add one here. So we'll use the open form one, and we'll go to the receivables transaction inquiry by customer. Since we have this grouped up by customer, we'll go there, as we can't go to the sales order processing document inquiry because that's by the SOP number, and we don't have that any longer with our summary options on. So we'll create a new one. We'll call it customer inquiry, and we'll pick GP as our product, sales as our series, and the receivables transaction inquiry by customer as our form. We'll click add to add a task so that we can set the field value and then run that script that's on that field for the customer number on that window. And we're going to put the customer number from our sales transaction work into that field. So now it's going to pass the customer number from our report back to the window when it opens. And now that window requires a redisplay. So I'm just going to do a run a field script on the redisplay button as well. We'll make that our default. We'll say OK and save our list. And once it refreshes here, if I double click on a record, it opens the receivables transaction inquiry by customer with that customer ID populated. And after it populated, it hit redisplay so that I am seeing the actual transactions in the list. And you can see it's opening for work open in history, so we're getting all of the records that are in our report. But we forgot to make our returns negative, so let's go back and see if we can create our calculation for that. First, so that you can see it, I'm just going to turn off the summary options and put a couple of fields back on just so we can see that the calculation is actually working and what's happening, because when it's all rolled up we can't really tell that our returns are going negative, so I want to make sure it's working first. So we'll go into calculations now that we have that off. Go to add, and we'll add one in here. And we'll just again call it extended price calc and make it a currency. And now we know we need to do a case statement just as we did in Designer, so I'm going to pick case. And you can see the nice thing here is it put all that formatting in there. I don't have to go pick each one individually. I just have to tell it what my expressions are. So we'll pick our SOP type here as our input expression. And then we have to say what to do when what. So that'll be our return. So when it's a 4 as a SOP type, which is return, then I need to take that extended price and take it times a -1. So we'll just type in that portion. And then what to do else. Just take the extended price, we'll validate that, say okay, and save it. So the same basic calculation we did in Designer, but it took us a lot less time to do and it seemed to be a lot easier. We're going to turn that on by default. And if I edit it, it looks good with the decimal places and the formatting already, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's save that and see if it worked. It looks like it did. All my returns are negative. But to be honest with you, there's a lot easier way of doing this. If we go back to SmartList Builder and we find the extended price field, we can actually go to the field options and then go to this negative values tab. If I turn that on, I can just pick the SOP type and say when that's a return, then it's going to make that field negative. So if I save this, our extended price is still on there, so we'll save that. And remember, our other one's called extended price calc, so we'll know the difference. And now if you compare that calculation and the price on a return, it made them both negative. So very easy, simple, check a box and pick the field we want to do it on to make it negative versus even having to create that new calculation. Now just to show you a couple other things we can do in SmartList Builder, I'm going to reorder the columns. So I'm going to click this columns button here, and you can see it has the order, but I really want the customer number up below SOP number, so we'll move that up. We'll move our extended price calculation down, good enough. And if we go back to options, you can see that there's a multi-company option here as well. And so we could turn that on and get the data from multiple companies into one list. We can also go to options and choose duplicate and get this new smart list we have into an Excel report or a navigation list if we'd like, or we can duplicate it to another smart list so that we can have two that are very similar but make changes we need to in one of them. If we look at the different table types we have, you can see that we have a lot of options besides just GP tables. We have SmartList, SQL Server tables, which allows us to pull any tables from any SQL database on our same server as our GP databases. SQL scripting, which allows us to do SQL select statements. Data connections, and extended resources if we need to pull those in as well. So we didn't have a lot of those options available in Designer to us either. So hopefully you've been able to see the similarities and differences between SmartList Designer and SmartList Builder. As you can see, we can do a lot of the same things between both of them, but there are a lot of added benefits to SmartList Builder that Designer just can't do. If you'd like more information on SmartList Builder, please let us know. You can sign up for one of our product demos, or we can work with you through our sales team to get you the information you need. Just join us on eOneSolutions.com. If you're looking for the demos, they're on the events page, or under the products you can find more information on SmartList Builder there. We hope this information has been very useful for you and that you'll let us know if you have any further questions on the Designer versus SmartList Builder.